Hello, hi everyone. Hope you're all good in the world, wherever you are today. I'm going to be talking to you today about how hypnosis works. So, for those that don't know me, I'm a hypnosis and resilience expert, and I'm going to be showing some demonstrations of people who I have worked with, who've come to be brave enough and courageous enough to come see me. I really don't bite, and I have got today a story that I'm going to share with you, which is an amazing story of a guy called Trevor, and he is a fireman, and he is a firefighter, or he certainly wanted to continue being a firefighter. Unfortunately, he was struggling in his job, and he was failing assessments. And of course, if you are a firefighter, you can't fail at the assessments, especially when you're in tight places with incredibly heavy gear on, and it can get incredibly suffocating. And the last place you want to be to have a panic attack. And unfortunately, this is what Trevor was up to. He came to see me initially because he was having panic attacks, going through small enclosed spaces. So he came to see me because basically he was going to be kicked out of his job if he didn't do something about it. So I'm going to share my screen, which gives you a little bit of information. It also helps me to remember what I did with Trevor. If you have any questions along route, please do share them, and I'll do my best to answer them. It's interactive. Today I'm on both my Facebook profile, Facebook page, and LinkedIn. So anybody out there, if you want to just say hello and say good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I'll crack on. So, like I said, Trevor is a fireman. He was overweight. That was some part of the problem, because as a fireman, the last thing you want to be is overweight for a start. And you want to be fit and you want to be healthy, right? But he was on the weighty side. He hadn't always been, but as this story unravels, you'll realise that there were things that were contributing to his weight that made things different for him when he first came to see me. So yes, he was having panic attacks in enclosed situations. So unfortunately, there were moments in his assessment periods where he was actually having to be rescued himself, which obviously is not good to be a firefighter, having to be rescued. You want to have confidence in your firefighters to be people who can rescue you. So he felt pretty incompetent. His self-esteem and his confidence had gone rock bottom, and he seriously didn't feel he was up to the job, even though he'd done a great job up to that point. So something had changed in his life. He was very unhappy, as you can imagine, and incredibly stressed. A very stressful period for him, but he was going through some other stuff as well, which we'll talk about. So what he would do is he would come home from work. He wasn't allowed to be a firefighter until he could pass his assessments, which didn't make him feel great, comparing himself to his mates who were all kind of, he'd worked with for a while, a long time, and they were flying colours, passing everything, and he was sat on the sidelines, not able to even do his job. But the problem was, when he used to go home, the first thing he did, because he was stressed, would drink. So he would head to the fridge for a beer and relax a bit. He wasn't a smoker prior to that point, but he started smoking again, stress related. He had a beer, and the beer was connected now to having a cigarette. So he would go out on the back veranda, backyard, and he'd have his cigarette and his beer, and that would be it for the night. He would smoke a packet of 20 in the night, and many beers, as well as wine as well. So you can imagine that amount of alcohol, that amount of stress is now starting to pile the weight on, which is contributing to him not getting in those small spaces very easily and not being very fit. So he was desperate to do something about it. He was drinking heavily. It was obviously affecting his judgments as well in the daytime, because he would wake up with hangovers and an inability to focus as well as he could. The added pressure for Trevor was that his wife wanted to have another child. It turned out he had been to get assessed because they couldn't have another child for one reason or another. It was unexplained infertility. And the problem with unexplained infertility is that it could be either of them. So they both got tested. His wife was okay. She was ready to go. Unfortunately, Trevor wasn't. He had a low sperm count, which made it very difficult for him to get his wife pregnant. And we know what contributes to low sperm count is obesity, smoking, alcohol use, etc. So he had another added pressure because he did want a child, or consciously he wanted a child. Whether we were self-sabotaging, that can happen in order to not have a child, but that wasn't the case in this case. He did want another child, but the problem was he couldn't produce, couldn't deliver the goods, as we say. So he had to deal with some of the things. So it's a whole, as you can see, hypnosis isn't as straightforward sometimes. They come in for this and we solve that and it solves the problem. We look at a whole, when we do the assessment with people using hypnosis, we do a whole assessment of what's the chain of events. So he presented with panic in his job. Well, panic in his job came from somewhere else. But also stress-related unhealthy behaviours, which was smoking and drinking, was contributing to his weight, and he wanted that. There's an added pressure of stress now that he's incompetent in his sex life because he can't deliver the goods for his wife to have another child. So he's got a lot of stuff going on, and we have to unravel this and figure out what's the component that's going to make the biggest difference if we change it in that whole process. It was very optimistic, and that's important for hypnosis to work, is that someone is coming with a clear positive attitude that something can be done and they want something to be done. They're not being told to do this because from someone else who has an ulterior motive. He wanted to continue in his job. He wasn't self-sabotaging, and he realised that he could, if he stopped this alcohol and smoking business, he would lose the weight, he would feel healthier. And he had another motivator in that he wanted to run a marathon. In the state he was in, there was no chance. But what he wanted to do, he wanted to run a marathon. So the first thing we did was help him to visualise how he could run a marathon being fit and healthy. So we created an image in his imagination. We created an image of his ideal future self being that person who was fit, healthy, not smoking, not drinking, and could run a marathon because he was fit and well. But first we had to manage his confidence because his confidence was quite low. So we built up his confidence. What we call in our line of work is ego strengthening. So we strengthened the ego to help him to, or boost his ego to help him to become more confident about the process and the journey he's about to make. And then what happens is we can then build on that with his motivation. And within a week or two, the first thing he did was cut down his alcohol and untie that with his smoking. So he was smoking and drinking a lot less. And he buddied up with someone at work who he'd known a long time, who also wanted to run and did run and was a better runner than he was. But then that's good because that could pull him along. So what they did, they agreed as part of his process was to, straight after work, instead of going home straight for the fridge and having a beer, which was a habit he got into, he instead was going to go straight out after work. So he never came home. And so that already broke the pattern. It's called a pattern interrupt. And we do this a lot when we're helping people to break habits of all kinds, whether it's nail biting or whatever it might be. Anyway, he was able to now break that habit. So when he came home, it was a fresh start. He hadn't got the same processes that he'd learned to do previously. So he would go running with his pal, walking actually, for a lot of the time, the first few times they went, into a slow jog and then into a slow jog, pause, fast jog, etc. So they built it up together. And that helped his metabolism, which helped him to lose a little bit of weight. because he was running more, he was active, he was feeling better in himself, and he was reducing his alcohol intake. So when he came home, he may have a beer or two, but it certainly wasn't the amount he was drinking previously. So yeah, his motivation and his confidence increased a big time within a session or two, actually, by going running. Running is a great a booster for self-esteem. It gives us a lot of great things, that hidden benefits, if you like, of doing exercise. So yeah, he would do that until he could reduce his weight, and then they started getting more serious in terms of preparing for the marathon. That was over a few sessions later. So he broke all his routines, basically, and that gave him a good head start in terms of being more confident generally, so specifically in terms of running, but then more generally in terms of being able to focus on the assessments. So he didn't wake up groggy in the morning. He was able to go to work, and we helped him to visualize doing those assessments as well without having the panic attacks. By having less weight on him, he was more focused in his brain, and he was able to visualize going through those assessments with ease, like he used to. So he got the muscle memory to do them, but he just lost the confidence to fulfill the assessments at the moment. So if you can do it in your brain, you can do it in reality. So that's what happened. He was able to sail through those assessments, get back into work, and feel fulfilled, because once now he's now competent. He's feeling like he's a firefighter with reason, purpose. He can actually do the job. He can save lives. That's what he went into the job to do. And it's making him now feel fulfilled in his work. So he altogether changed rapidly in a matter of a few sessions. But that's how hypnosis can work. It can work so fast. When someone is highly driven, motivated, they've got all the right reasons, they're in the right place. And it's a good method to use if you are the kind of person that likes that approach. It does take a little bit of an imagination with some of the things that we do. So, we will kind of assess that at the initial assessment. We might ask you, for example, can you visualize a blue tree? And if you can, that's awesome. Or can you imagine your car all purple with pink dots on it? We might get you to imagine eating a lemon or something like that. But the idea is that you've got some level of imagination that we can access and we can utilize to help you to overcome all kinds of issues. With Trevor as well, in case he did have a future panic attack, which he didn't, but if he did, we just give little tools, what we call anchor tools, where we can help the person to revisit a place or an event in their imagination, which we've anchored something onto, which helps them to feel relaxed, calm, and that overcomes any sense of anxiety or stress in the moment. So these are really important little tools should you need them. So that's Trevor. That's how hypnosis worked for him. And if you've got any questions, if you want to talk to me about anything to do with hypnosis, I love it, and I will be happy to answer your questions. If you want to know more about weight, we have a show coming up tomorrow, actually. There's a show coming up tomorrow, and it will be probably live every Thursday as well, which is basically a Q&A session, which will help you to get to grips with hypnosis. You can ask questions live, and you can even come on a live show with me if you want, and I can demonstrate something with you. If it's too much going backwards and forwards with the chat business. So if you want to come on board and ask any questions, this week it's about weight. So if you've got anything you want to ask about weight, whether that's cravings, losing weight, changing habits, gaining weight, actually, you've had people who want to gain weight, come on board and talk to us, ask questions, and I'd love to see you there. All the best for now. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.